Sex is the life force energy that runs through us all. Can you use sexual energy for your spiritual evolution? Or perhaps for emotional healing? Is it even possible? Clinical sexologist Dr. Martha Tara Lee will explore all these and more on Eros Evolution on Om Times Radio.
Welcome to Eros Evolution. This is Dr. Martha Tara Lee. That's right. I asked everyone to just call me Martha, but yes, I do have a doctorate in human sexuality. I got it from Institute of Advanced Study of Human Sexuality in San Francisco 7 years ago, and I've been in private practice for coming to 6 years. My company is called Eros Coaching, and therefore the inspiration to call this show Eros Evolution. Eros Evolution is where sexuality and spirituality meets. The very reason why I'm so interested in the link between sexuality and spirituality is because I see myself as a spiritual person, and I'm a sexologist, and therefore I'm definitely interested in these two topics. And increasingly, I found myself being very drawn to the link between the two, and really about exploring the importance, because if we see a link and we don't recognize that it's important, why would we want to do anything about it? And this is the very premise of this show. In this show, what I will do is I bring on guests, and from time to time, I will share news and articles and books relating to sexuality or spirituality. This week, I don't have a guest, but I like to spend this time for this second episode to really talk about myself, what I think about sexuality and spirituality. I have lots of guests lined up until April so far, and I have with me next week Laurie Handels. She is a film producer, sex educator, and author of Sex and Happiness, The Tantric Laws of Intimacy. I'm really looking forward to her being on the show next week because she will be talking about Tantra. Can sex be a spiritual path? I know a little bit about Tantra here and there, but Laurie Handels is a very established and seasoned teacher, and she will be able to share with us so much more than I possibly could. In this show today, I want to tell you a little bit about who I am and why I became a sexologist. Then perhaps explaining how I define what sexuality and spirituality is. So what do? I'm a sexologist. A sexologist, depending on how they define it, usually they work with clients in private sessions. For me personally, there's no touch on nudity in my work in Singapore. I'm a Singaporean Chinese, born and bred in Singapore, and you can probably tell from my accent that I'm definitely not a Caucasian. I have very much a very typical sex education growing up in Singapore, which is there was none. There was no sex education whatsoever. Periodically, when I was, say, 12 and later on maybe 16, I had people coming to my school talking about the difference of what it means to be a boy and a girl. What's going to happen when I start having my period, and how, as a girl, I have to take care of my hygiene. And that was pretty much the extent of my sex education, because I didn't go into the science stream. I didn't take biology. So I knew very little about sex or anatomy or reproductive system, contraception. And this is pretty much how the whole generation of Singaporeans around me grew up. And this includes most Asians that I know of. When I came into practice, this is pretty much something that I hear again and again. And it may be different for you or similar depending on where you came from. However, I would like to say the media and the portrayal of sex and sexuality really does a number on our attitude towards sex. So when people ask me why I became a sexologist, this is really the number one question I get asked all the time. And so I sometimes make a joke out of it. I say things along the lines of, I became a sexologist because I love sex. And it's true, I do love sex. And so they laugh and then they say, well, tell me really why did you become a sexologist? And depending on how I'm feeling, if I'm feeling playful that day, then I just answer simply and plainly, I became a sexologist because I didn't want to be bad in sex. It started off me wanting to learn more about sex and then just becoming more and more curious about it. And that actually is also a truth. And sometimes I don't feel like entertaining them too much or, just cut to the chase. And I go a little bit deeper. I tell them the reason why I became a sexologist is to help people. I found myself being drawn to a higher calling, a higher purpose of asking myself a deeper question of why are we here? Why am I here specifically? And I've always found myself being drawn to things that are a little bit different than most Singaporeans that I know of, which is maybe just survival or really building and taking care of only their family. However, I always ask myself deeper questions even when I was very young, which is, no, why am I really here? And I kept coming back to my calling to be here to help people. And how can I help people if I don't help myself? And so I have always been on this journey of working on myself, improving myself, developing myself so that I can be the best version of who I am. But it all comes back to my desire, my inner knowing that I'm here to help people. So why sex? Why sex? Well, I'm interested in it. I felt confident about this topic. And during a certain time in my life where I was at the crossroads, really asking and re-asking what I'm here to do, during that time, there was this spat of articles in the media where there were statistics coming forth about rising teenage pregnancy and rising STI rates in Singapore. And we read about such bad news about sex and sexuality all the time. However, during that time, it just dawned on me that we don't talk about sex in positive ways, at least not in Singapore, not in ways that I have come across. Sure, I read about it in magazines. However, it's always sensationalized and always talked about in tongue-in-cheek, funny, over-the-top ways. And I wondered why there was nobody talking about it in meaningful ways, in deep ways, in ways that made you realize how precious, how special, how sacred sex was, because it's amazing. Sex is amazing and wonderful to me. So if something that's so wonderful is not talked about, then how will people get to know how to really become more comfortable or to maximize their potential in terms of their development as sexual beings? This was when 7 years ago, I became really, really, really angry. angry about the way things are, how hard it had been for me in terms of wanting to find information relating to sex and sexuality and finding it really difficult to get any form of resources. It's true. And this is why I knew I had to become a sexologist. I thought I knew a lot about sex, and then I went to sex school in San Francisco. When I got there, thinking that, oh, I'm so comfortable with my body, I'm so comfortable with sex, and not really understanding what is sexuality. The difference between sex and sexuality is big. Sex is just part of sexuality. It's what I consider a subset of sexuality. And sexuality, our sexuality, is much more than the physical act. When I got to sex school, I realized it was more than tips and tricks and techniques and positions. It was more. So let me tell you what more meant to me. It was a little bit of a culture shock, realizing being a typical Singaporean Chinese heterosexual, not realizing that there were people who were different than me, people who consider themselves gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgendered. I had no idea. I knew they existed, but it didn't occur to me to understand or to explore. It's like, why should I? I'm happy with who I am, but because you're happy with who you are, you don't make the effort to necessarily understand people who are different. So when we come back, I'll tell you more about what sexuality actually means.
Bringing you the best of the conscious minds in the world. Om Times Radio, your conscious lifestyle on steroids.
Radio Namaste leads you down the yellow brick road into portals of consciousness with the blue-collar goddess as your host. Interviews with humans who could be famous or just popular, and answers to everything are on the agenda. Tune into Om Times Radio and drop in on Thursdays at 3 Eastern. It's a different brand of enlightenment.
The Laying On of Hands Healing Radio Show is about treating the whole person, mind, body, and spirit. Join me, Charles Smith, as I share life-balancing measures such as nutrition and spiritual practices to help you take charge of your own health and wellness every Thursday at 7 p.m. on Om Times Radio.
Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of Om Times Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of Om Times. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community. The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is. Conscious media for conscious minds. Om Times.
This is Dr. Martha Tara Lee of Eros Evolution. Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking and starting to explore what sexuality actually meant. I thought I knew everything that I needed to know about being a sexologist. I was comfortable with my body. I had very little body image issues. I was good in bed, I have to admit. And I thought sex school would be a breeze. And then, being so sheltered, going to sex school, realizing that there are people who are different from me that I never really took the time to understand. And sex school really exposed me to all kinds of people who are just different. And it never occurred to me. It's just like we don't know what we don't know. And once I knew what I didn't know, I realized I was just so sheltered and protected. And this is not information you go out of your way to seek out. But because I was training to be a sexologist, I had to understand all these different concepts and become really comfortable just in case in future if I had clients who were different from me, that I would know how to support them. So this included people who are gay, bisexual, transgender, lesbian, disabled, of a different age than myself, say for instance going through menopause or the male version andropause. And then what about people who are facing issues of aging, disability, illness? So these were the many things that we explored in sex school. And in sex school, finally, I had words for things that I knew I had issues with, but I never really had a name for. As a woman growing up in Singapore, there were certain cultural norms and gender roles that we have. For instance, I never really felt very safe to be a woman, and I never really felt really comfortable with what being a woman meant. Don't take me wrong, like I'm very happy with being a woman, but I just never really explored what it meant to be a woman. So while I can enjoy sex as a woman, I didn't really have a lot of joy or pleasure from being a woman. You know, it's like I could have enjoyed sex if I were a man, but I didn't really know what was the difference with being a woman. Is being a woman any different from being a man, other than the fact that we look different, we are expected to dress different? So there were certain things that were said to me in my life that made me feel really angry about being a woman. For instance, oh, you're a woman, you shouldn't do that. Women don't talk like that. If you're too smart, if you're too successful, nobody will want you. And this is actually not uncommon. Then there's also women who are afraid of coming across as too sexy, too slutty. And this limits us with becoming more comfortable with just being who we are. And then the whole concept of what femininity meant to me was basically nothing. I didn't know what femininity was. It was pretty much seen as useless. And over the years, when I started becoming a sexologist and being a role model for my clients said they found it the most useful part of working with me was actually how positive I was about sex. And because I realized it was less about what I was saying than who I was was helping them more than anything I could ever say to them. So I repeat, because this is really important. Who I am, what I believe, was more important than what I said. They could sense who I was and my comfort and ease with sexuality. And being in my presence and having that time with me was helping them more than what I was actually saying. They could just feel it. It's just like how we size up people all the time. They could feel it. And that made me realize I needed to work on my sexuality even more. My clients inspired me to be the best version of who I was, and I knew it included working on my issues with being a woman. When I became more comfortable with being a woman, I started to want to dress different. I started to explore what femininity meant, and this changed my relationship with my sexuality. It deepened my relationship with sexuality. And so this is really my piece about what sexuality is all about. It's more than just sex. It's more than how you feel in your body. It includes how you identify with your gender, male, female, and your comfort with your gender role. Masculine, feminine, what does it mean? And people who don't really understand this will take issue with that. In exploring sexuality and spirituality, we do need to talk about spirituality. And let's move away from the sexuality piece and talk about spirituality. So this is really all from my perspective. And I'm sharing all this as a little, get to know who Martha is as the host of Eros Evolution. I was a Christian, a practicing Christian for many years, and I have been through a lot in my life, and at one point I realized that what really resonated with me more was being more spiritual than religious, being more aware that God is in all of us, and that spirituality and being sensitive in your bodies and being connected with the universe does not need to be tied to a particular religion. And I was told that I am an indigo child and also an empath. And you can look up what these means. But basically what they mean is that I am a highly sensitive person who is very sensitive to energies. As part of my way of working on myself and coping with the challenges of life, I found myself drawn to all these things people consider new agey, to be a better person. But to me, it's just very, very simple. If it makes me feel better, it makes me feel good and light, then that's something that I want to pursue. So for a long time, sex and sexuality and spirituality were two different boxes for me. Sex and spirituality were different things that I was both interested in, but pursued in my own free time because I just liked them. I just felt happy. I was just drawn to these topics, and they never merged for me. I never saw the link between sex and spirituality, and this is probably why I'm so passionate about exploring it and helping people to make sense of it. I saw a hint of the link between sex and spirituality when I was attending this program called Sexological Bodywork. In Sexological Bodywork, we learn how to do erotic massage, and through the massage, realized that we have energies running through our bodies. We all know that. But how do you use this energy that we have for emotional healing? Say you have an erotic moment, you are completely charged. You have all these energies in your genitals. Move the energy up to your heart through your intention, through your breath, touch, sound, movement. You could move the energy up to your heart, open up the blockages of your heart, and heal lots of emotional blockages or trauma that had been locked there. That was my first inclination of the link between sexuality and spirituality. And I found it really hard to reconcile with how I could bring it back to Singapore and explain it to people who don't even know much about sex, much less talk about it in these ways. And this is why I find myself being more and more drawn to work that is on an international platform. I contribute now to Elephant Journal, to My Body Green, to Your Tango, and these are some more international platforms where I could explore things that actually is more where I'm at versus where a lot of Singaporeans are just starting to understand. And it's fine, because I put myself in this situation where I am here and I want to help my fellow Singaporeans, but yet at the same time, I do want to evolve. I do want to grow. I do want to explore things that I find are interesting and fascinating for me. Deepak Chopra actually said something which I found myself meditating on quite a bit for a while. And he basically said something really profound yet simple at the same time. He said sexual energy is life force energy. Is it obvious to you? Is sexual energy life force energy to you? We come from sex. Whatever we feel from sexual energy, when we feel horny, when we feel charged, when we feel orgasmic, that is when we feel truly alive. I'm just wondering whether you have ever explored or thought about the link between the two. So what would that mean? Would being more sexual help you with your life force energy? If you had more orgasms, more pleasure, would you then be more alive? Yeah, this was when I had this big aha moment and I realized that I knew really not that much and I wanted to know more. So just sit with this for a moment. Is sexual energy life force energy? And we'll come back after this break.
The Real Conscious Connection. Om Times Radio. IOM FM.
Hi, my name is Monica and I'm the host of Co-Creating Now. Give yourself an opportunity to connect with your all-knowing higher self and manifest joy, love and peace together every Tuesday, 11 a.m. Eastern.
The truth is, you can't change the world if you're broke. I know, I tried. Isn't it time you turned your life's calling into a profitable, freedom-based business? I'm Michelle Barr. Join me every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern for Sacred Success.
Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. Om Times Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single Om Times endeavor. Host your show with Om Times Radio Network. Simone Milasas would like you to know that business can be fun, which is why she wrote the book, Joy of Business. What if you could have the joy of business rather than the stress and struggle? Most of the time, the only thing stopping you from a thriving business is you. In the Joy of Business book, Simone gives you access consciousness tools and pragmatic ways to get out of your own way and to create the business, life, and living you know is possible and beyond what this reality says is achievable. Business is joy. It's creation. It's generative. It can be the adventure of living. You can purchase your copy of the book through Amazon or Joy of Business website, www.accessjoyofbusiness.com. The best of holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. Om Times Radio. IOM FM.
Welcome back. This is Dr. Martha Tara Lee of Eros Evolution. This is where sexuality and spirituality meets. Before the break today in this show, I talked about my own evolution of sexuality and my awareness of how sexuality and spirituality is linked. I was starting to talk about the work of Deepak Chopra. where he talks about sexual energy being life force energy. And I like to quote him from his book called Grow Younger, Live Longer, that was published in 2001. Deepak Chopra is the author of more than 80 books, with 22 being New York Times bestsellers. He said this in his book, Grow Younger, Live Younger. Sexual energy is the center energy of the universe. Sexual energy is sacred energy. When we have restored the sexual experience to the realm of the sacred, our world becomes divine, holy, and healed. Yeah, just sit with that for a moment. Sexual energy is our creative energy. Sexual energy is sacred. Sex is sacred. And how many people, a lot of people I know of, they just have sex from their genitals. That's it. They don't use their whole body to express the sacredness of the moment where they are in union with one or many people. The sacredness, the specialness that comes from sex has everything to do with, and I think the listeners out there who are spiritual will know where I'm coming from. Anything we approach, depending on how we approach it, comes from our intention. Where intention is, energy flows. And if you intend for your sexual experience to be divine, holy, healed, sacred, special, then let that be your intention. You just have that intent, and then you will be, you will do. It's less about tips, tricks, techniques, and more about intention. Yes, there are certain things that you do need to practice to get better at, but the intention is the most important thing. And that was a big aha moment for me, because I always saw sexuality and spirituality in two different boxes. What about you? Yeah. So I'm a sexologist, and that's what I do, right? I work with clients, I coach them, I give them assignments at home to do, and I take them through questions, and it's very natural that I start doing that with you, you know. I am inviting you to think about what you think of your own sexuality and what you feel around the link between sexuality and spirituality, and how you can make it sacred. Because when you do that, sex will actually heal you in every way, including in your body. So let me just introduce a few more different concepts that I got from my different teachers that I had over the years. In one of the, well, Annie Sprinkle is not really my teacher. However, I'm very inspired by her work. I have not actually met her in person, though we have messaged a little bit on Facebook. Annie Sprinkle is, and you can look her up, she's an American sexuality educator who's an artist, ecosexual, and she calls herself a sex ecologist right now. She is doing lots of work around protecting the environment. However, she actually talks about the link between masturbation and meditation. And she really inspires me with her word that she created called Medabation. And actually, there are lots of people I have come across who are talking about it, but maybe using different words. And I like the word that Annie Sprinkle came up with, Medabation. It basically means when you're masturbating, you can actually masturbate in intentional way, in mindful ways, conscious ways, so that it becomes and feels like a meditation. If you put masturbation and meditation together, you could get really deep within yourself. And this is something that I work through myself because I'm a sexologist. And I told you just now that I actually see it as my obligation, that my whole being just is ease with sexuality. It's more about who I am in front of my clients than what I say. And therefore, that ease with sexuality needed to be there. And I definitely did lots of Medabation so that my relationship with sexuality is, just together. Yeah, Medabation. Some of you may be thinking, maybe I have done that before. When you do Medabation, you will be in deep states of bliss. And it just feels so nurturing to yourself, nourishing. And it is making love with yourself. However, it is in such a way that makes you love yourself even more, even more. And we hear this all the time. You cannot love another person until you love yourself. It's hard for you to really understand what love is until you really love yourself. We give so much to our community, our family, our friends, our children, and not really to ourselves. And Medabation can be the way. I have people who say things along the lines of, well, I'm partnered, I don't need that. Or, I'm not really a sex person, I'm not really into sex. We can meditate, which I do. We can exercise, which I do. However, what if we could combine a few things and do masturbation with meditation and get deeper, deeper, deeper within ourselves, quickly, easily, effortlessly, effectively, smoothly, and then evolve quickly. So even my clients or friends, yes, my friends get it too, I encourage them to do this as a spiritual practice. And then they go, they never thought about that. I'd like to invite you to just sit with this and see if this is something that might come up for you. Maybe not now, hopefully now, maybe not now, but it can evolve. For me, I did Medabation, as I mentioned, and there's something else that I'd like to introduce to you. It's called Orgasmic Yoga. I learned about this through my teacher, Joseph Kramer. Joseph Kramer, K-R-A-M-E-R. Joseph Kramer is one of the foremost teachers of erotic massage in the world, and he has the new school of erotic touch. He was also the founder of the Body Electric. I have a lot of respect for Joseph because of what he has done for the community, and he coined sexological bodywork. One of the things that I learned from Joseph Kramer is orgasmic yoga. As the word yoga implies, it is a practice, and orgasmic involves our erotic energies. So erotic yoga or orgasmic yoga, he encourages us to masturbate for 30 minutes for 30 days as a practice. Yeah. How many of you have ever masturbated for 30 minutes for 30 days? I just talked about Medabation and deepening your spiritual and sexual connection with yourself. And Orgasmic Yoga basically says 30 minutes, 30 days. When I say this, then men would go, oh, how can I masturbate for 30 minutes? I don't think I can. So they actually associate masturbation with ejaculation. You can masturbate and you don't necessarily have to ejaculate as a man. For women, we don't get depleted when we orgasm. It's the same way as men. And so for men, they have to be very mindful that they don't ejaculate all the time if they were doing orgasmic yoga, because they would actually feel really tired. However, orgasmic yoga really can be something that helps men and women to become much more connected with their sexuality in deep ways. So this is orgasmic yoga, Medabation, sexuality, spirituality that I'm throwing at you. And this is the piece that I want to share with you, with what I have to say around what you can do to begin combining your sexuality and spirituality as a practice. And I don't suggest things that I don't do myself. And I have done orgasmic yoga properly, 30 minutes for 30 days, 3 times in my life. 3 times. The first time, I was going through a very bad breakup with my partner, and I had depression. And a friend of mine said, Martha, you're a sexologist, do not shut down your sexuality. And so she recommended that I return to doing orgasmic yoga. So after the break, more about orgasmic yoga. So sit with this, Medabation, orgasmic yoga.
Free your mind. Expand your soul. Om Times Radio. IOM FM.
Have you bought into the idea that you have to work hard for your money, that business is hard? I will share some dynamic access consciousness tools to get you out of your own way so you can create a business that actually succeeds. Join me, Simone Millisers, on The Joy of Business at 4 p.m. Mondays Eastern.
Hi, I'm Katrina Kavanagh, host of the I Am Wisdom radio show. I Am Wisdom is about the connection between mind work and energy work, spirituality and living a wonderful life. Looking forward to sharing each Sunday 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with you.
Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of Om Times Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of Om Times. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community. Have you ever wondered how to change your love paradigm? The secret key is finding a love partnership, not just a regular connection. How do you find these? Through conscious relationships. Ascending Hearts Dating is a dating site for people like you that believes in second chances and a different type of spiritual connection. Try Ascending Hearts for free today at ascendinghearts.com. and change your love paradigm. Ascending Hearts, the premier dating community for the spiritually awake. The best of the holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. Om Times Radio. IOM FM.
Welcome back to Eros Evolution, where sexuality and spirituality meets. This is Dr. Martha Tara Lee. If you're interested in my work, you can visit my website, www.eroscoaching.com. You can also retrieve the archives of Eros Evolution, the radio show. By just Googling Eros Evolution, you will be able to find the show description, the lineup of my guests, and also the archives. Last week I had with me Lawrence Lanoff, and he is a sexuality educator himself and also the author of the book A Course in Freedom. Last week there was this big moment where I had this error of not being able to patch in my guest, and so there is a time lapse where you don't hear any audio for the 5th to the 12th minute. But I encourage you to listen to that show because he talks about the importance of pleasure and more pleasure in our lives. And he is so amazing. When he spoke, he gave me goosebumps. So please check out that show because I want Lawrence Lanoff to have some publicity because he was just so generous and kind and patient towards me. Coming back to the show, I talked about Orgasmic Yoga, how I did it for 30 minutes for 30 days, 3 times in my life so far. The first time I did it, I was not very happy. I was complaining. Why do I have to do this? I have a very sensitive body. I can't take it. Yeah. And my teacher encouraged me, Martha, there is no limit to pleasure. If you feel that you cannot take this pleasure because it's too much, maybe you need to explore your limiting beliefs around too much. I got really angry. He doesn't understand what I'm feeling. He doesn't understand what I'm going through. He doesn't know how sensitive I am. And when I went through depression and my friend reminded me, don't shut down your sexuality. Why don't you do orgasmic yoga? When you are depressed, you need to get out of it. My practice, my love for my work, my love for my clients, my calling to help people was hinging on me getting well. And so I did it. I did it with a vengeance. I did it diligently, religiously, spiritually. And I got through my depression very quickly. What I did was I just surrendered. After the 3rd day of doing it for 30 minutes, I said, how else can I do this in a way that doesn't hurt? Because I was getting sore. How can I do this lightly? How can I do this in a fun way? How can I explore my body in ways that I haven't explored before? Can I try some other kind of sensation that I haven't felt in my body? And I did. I explored my body. I know this is all very intimate stuff that I'm sharing with you, but if I don't do this with my ease and comfort with sexuality as a Singaporean Chinese, then who will? I put myself out there, sharing my heart, my personal life, my intimate moments, because I see myself as a model. I got through my depression with orgasmic yoga. I did it for 30 days. And then maybe a few months later, I told a friend about it, how it changed my life. And I had a pet with this friend and said, let's do it together. If you do it for 30 days, I'll do it for 30 days. And then at the end of 30 days, let's meet and talk about whether we have shifted. Whether it's sexually, emotionally, energetically. And she said, okay, let's do it. And we did. The second time was different. Although I could feel that my relationship with my sexuality was definitely deeper. And then the third time, I documented it. The third time, I did it in support of a client. I said, if you do it, I'll do it. Let's do it together and let's come back and meet. We never met again, actually. And she said it did help her. And for the purpose of wanting to do something different, I documented it. What I did was every day after orgasmic yoga, I would do a little video talking about what I did and what I did differently that day. And then I put together a snapshot from the different videos after 30 days to see if I could see a difference in how I looked, because I was curious whether I looked different. So if you go onto YouTube and you Google Orgasmic Yoga Martha, you should be able to find the different videos where I talk about week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, and also the one where I talk about the one where I show the different screenshots, and you can see for yourself whether I look different. Orgasmic Yoga Martha on YouTube. So check it out. In today's show, so far, I've talked about sexuality, spirituality. From my perspective, I talked about Medabation, that was coined by Annie Sprinkle, and I talked about orgasmic yoga, the practice that Joseph Kramer came up with. I also shared with you the transformation that I felt in my own body and how orgasmic yoga was the one thing that really helped me to deepen my relationship with my own sexuality, my comfort, and I own it completely. I'd like to share with you a little story that actually happened a few months ago. A friend of mine, she was giving up her business doing juicing in Singapore, and she said, I'm happy that I'm quitting actually, because when I was doing it as a work, I felt that my relationship with juicing was affected, and I wasn't really so into it when I talk about it all the time. But I'm sure you don't have any problems. So what she meant was, and of course now I'm paraphrasing, what she meant was her relationship with juicing was affected because of her work, and I don't have a problem. It's just like how some photographers don't want to be a professional photographer because they are afraid their passion for photography will be affected. And I was angry, annoyed, and a little bit pissed off with her. And I told her, what are you talking about? Because I'm a sexologist, I see my sexuality as the most important thing. This is something that I work on all the time. And then she had a shock. While she was so busy working on her juicing business, she forgot to maintain her relationship with juicing. And that's why she got tired and depleted and resentful, and her passion for juicing reduced. And that probably was the best advice I ever got in my life, when my friend said this to me: Martha, you're a sexologist. Do not shut down your sexuality. When I was going through the emotional breakout with my partner and had depression, you just want to curl up and sleep all day and cry. And I didn't. I opened up more because of that one sentence that she said. And I went deeper into orgasmic yoga. And there were tremendous shifts in me. And I'm grateful for that time now, looking back, because I can share this story with people and explain to them that no, I'm human. I have evolved over time by working on myself, on my sexuality, and I do this on a continuous basis. When my clients come in crying and complaining and screaming and shouting at each other, or, behind their partner's backs, it's very easy for me to shut down and go, yeah, sex is bad, but sex is not. And I'm so grateful that for everything that I've gone through in life, ups and downs, and with my practice, working with clients, the one thing that continues for most part of my entire life is this belief, and this is really my saving grace, that sex is wonderful. Sex is wonderful, sex is great. And I have my mother to thank. My clients go, why are you so different? Why do you have such a positive attitude about sex? Why are you so curious? What made you even start wanting to explore about sex and sexuality? And I have to thank my mother, because when I was a little girl, I asked her about sex and what it is, and she wouldn't tell me. I didn't have much sex education. It wasn't that different. The only thing that was different, I believe, is that when I asked my mom about sex, she would smile. The hint of a smile made me think or come to the conclusion that sex was something that must be good, because she didn't say so much and she just cannot explain, and it's great. So with that, we have to end. Do check out my website, eroscoaching.com. You can email me through my website. This has been Eros Evolution of Om Times Radio. Do check out my description of this show, because there are some free gifts there for you. Next week, I have Laurie Handels, who is a film producer and sex educator. Her topic is on Tantra. Can sex be a spiritual path? Join me next week on Eros Evolution, where sexuality and spirituality meets.